So I want you to picture probably the most famous image in all of science. You know the
Off
one?
a Pink Floyd album cover.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
The dark side of the moon cover. It's this tight, narrow beam of bright white light, and it hits a triangular glass prism, and then boom!
It fans out.
Right, it perfectly fans out into this beautiful, vibrant rainbow on the wall. And I mean, for 300 years now, we've been taught that this exact experiment by Isaac Newton basically settled the debate on light.
Yeah, that's the bedrock of the physics curriculum.
Right. The textbook story says that white light is just a mixture of distinct colors, sort of like a bag of differently colored Skittles, you know? And the prism simply separates them out. But, and this is what we're getting into today, what if that universally accepted, unquestionable truth is just fundamentally wrong?
Which is a huge statement, I know.
It is. What if white light has absolutely no inherent color at all?
It is the absolute definition of having to rewrite the textbook.
Yeah.
Because while Newton's observation of that perfect rainbow is totally unquestionable, I mean, he saw what he saw, and we replicate it in labs every single day. His interpretation of what is physically happening is a different story.
Right.
That interpretation deserves a really serious, honestly, almost uncomfortable second look.
And that is our mission today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are revisiting that iconic experiment with you. We've got this incredibly fascinating source document on the table today, and it just meticulously dismantles the classical explanation of how light and color actually operate.
It really takes it apart piece by piece.
It does. We are going to build a completely new model of light from the ground up with you. But to do that, we first have to find the massive logical hole in the old model. We need to talk about the mystery of the pooling colors.
Right. So to set the baseline here, the traditional Newtonian view relies entirely on refraction.
Okay.
The idea is that light is made of particles, or, distinct wave components, and each color has a slightly different refractive index.
Meaning they bend differently.
Exactly. So when they hit the glass of the prism, the red light bends a little bit, and the blue light bends a lot more.
And because they bend at different angles, they fan out and hit the wall in a specific order. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Done and dusted.
Right. It feels like it makes perfect intuitive sense. Well, it feels intuitive, assuming the prism is just a passive piece of glass, like a simple filter. Refraction is this really elegant way to explain divergence, the spreading out of the light beam.
Right.
But the text points out a really critical flaw here. Refraction completely fails to explain the convergence. It does not explain why the colors pool together.
Wait, okay, I'm stuck on something here. Let me see if I'm visualizing this gap correctly. Let's ignore the whole rainbow for a second and just look at a wide beam of yellow light. If refraction is just bending light based on a specific angle, why doesn't a wide beam of yellow light just stay a wide beam of yellow light when it hits the wall?
That is the exact question.
Right, because it bent by the exact same angle, so it should just shift over. Why does it pinch together into this concentrated, tight little pool?
That is precisely the mechanical problem. I mean, think of incident parallel rays of light hitting a surface.
Yep.
If they're deflected by the exact same angle,
Yeah.
physics dictates they must remain parallel when they exit.
Right, they can't magically squeeze together.
Exactly. They should just translate onto the wall as a diffuse wash of light without any merging at all. Yet that tight spatial organization, the perfect bright band of yellow neatly bordered by orange and green, is undeniable in Newton's spectrum. It happens every single time.
So it's like if I throw a handful of gravel through a chain link fence, it scatters, it diverges. But the colors in the spectrum aren't just scattering. They are actively sorting themselves into these really dense, distinct stripes.
Yes. The spectrum behaves as if a highly specialized sorting mechanism is active after the refraction takes place.
Oh, wow.
Because if refraction alone were responsible, you just wouldn't get that tight geometric obedience. The colors would overlap in a messy, muddy blur.
Which means the prism is absolutely not just a passive filter letting colored pixels pass through.
No, not at all.
Something else is physically manipulating the light to organize it so strictly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source text argues that to understand this really tight organization, we have to stop treating light like a soup made of colored ingredients.
Like the Skittles?
I dropped the Skittles analogy entirely. We have to fundamentally rethink the structural condition of a light beam itself. And it all hinges on a concept called phase.
Okay, phase. I know phase can sound a little academic to people, so to help you picture this, the source uses a really great analogy. Think of a traditional clock face.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah, so phase isn't about how big the clock is or how fast time is moving. Think of phase as the 60 individual positions a second hand occupies during a 1 minute cycle.
Right.
It's at the 12, then the 1, then the 2, all the way around. Now imagine two waves of light. They can have the exact same frequency, the exact same brightness, but their phase alignment, like where that second hand is currently pointing, changes how they behave entirely.
Because phase is all about alignment and timing.
Right.
If those two second hands are perfectly synced, meaning they both hit the 12 at the exact same millisecond, their phase alignment generally enhances the wave. They build on each other.
They make it stronger.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But if they are misaligned, say one is pointing at the 12 and the other is pointing at the 6, that misalignment causes them to interfere. They can weaken or even completely cancel each other out.
And the source mentions that real-world example of polarized sunglasses blocking out light.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect example.
Right. Like if you take two polarized sunglass lenses and turn one 90 degrees, everything just goes pitch black.
Mhm.
And I've always thought of that as just stacking dark plastic, but that's actually phase constraint in action.
It is entirely phase constrained.
Can you break down the actual mechanism of why turning a lens 90 degrees makes light disappear?
Sure. Let's visualize the light coming from the sun as this messy, chaotic jumble of waves.
Okay.
They're oscillating in every possible direction, up and down, left and right, diagonal. A polarized lens is basically a microscopic picket fence.
A picket fence. Got it.
Right, so it only lets the waves that are oscillating vertically up and down pass between the slats.
Okay, so the chaotic sunlight hits the first lens, and now we only have nice, neat vertical waves coming through on the other side.
Right. Now you place the second lens behind it. If you keep it oriented the exact same way, the vertical waves slide right through those vertical slats. No problem. But if you turn that second lens sideways, 90 degrees, its slats are now horizontal. A vertical wave physically cannot pass through a horizontal gap.
It just hits a wall.
Exactly. Its phase permission has been revoked, the wave is canceled, and you see black.
That makes total sense. So we are using a physical boundary, the second lens, to block a specific phase plane.
Yes.
But the text takes this a massive step further, because if we take this idea of phase down to the microscopic level of a single beam of light moving through space, it breaks our mental model completely.
It really does.
Because, I mean, we usually picture a beam of light like a flat sheet of paper just moving straight forward.
Right. At a macroscopic scale, when you shine a flashlight at a wall, it does look like a single flat coherent plane advancing through the air.
Yeah.
But microscopically, the text explains that the field experiences something called phase lagging, which actually prevents that uniform forward advance.
Phase lagging. Okay, what does that do?
Well, because different parts of the wave are at slightly different positions on that clock face we talked about. The forward motion cannot be a flat wall. The lag physically forces the light's trajectory into a spiral geometry.
Wait, I really want to make sure we don't just gloss over that. Explain how a timing difference, a phase lag, actually creates a physical spiral.
Okay, think of the light wave like a very wide ribbon stretching across a room.
Okay, a ribbon.
If two people hold the ends of the ribbon and whip it up and down at the exact same time, the wave travels straight down the ribbon as a flat hump.
Right, a normal wave.
But what if the person on the left starts their flick a fraction of a second later than the person on the right?
Oh, so the left side is lagging behind.
Yes. And because of that lag, the wave doesn't just travel straight forward anymore. The varying states of up and down across the width of the ribbon create a torquing motion. It naturally rolls.
It twists.
Exactly. If you multiply that torquing motion across a full three-dimensional field of light, that flat ribbon twists into a corkscrew. It becomes a continuous spiraling geometry pushing through space.
So a beam of light is literally twisting through the air.
It is.
But wait, that creates a huge logistical problem for Newton's experiment.
How so?
Because in order to get his tight beam of light, Newton forced sunlight through a tiny, flat slit in his window blinds. How on earth does a three-dimensional twisting corkscrew fit through a two-dimensional flat slot in a piece of wood?
The short answer is it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Not all at once, anyway. And this is exactly where the classical model completely falls apart.
Okay, lay it on me.
When the spiraling light hits an aperture like that slit in the blinds, that slit acts as a rigid boundary constraint. Because the light is twisting, no single slice of that spiral possesses the exact geometric requirements to pass through the slit at a single moment in time.
Because the corkscrew is spinning and the slit is just a narrow, static doorway.
Exactly. The incident light literally has to twist its way through the opening. As it rotates, it presents different phase geometries to the slit, piece by piece.
Wow. The text actually calls the aperture a phase-gated permission boundary.
That's a great term for it.
It's basically acting like an incredibly strict bouncer at a nightclub.
I think the bouncer analogy is absolutely perfect for this.
Right.
Yeah, imagine the bouncer at the door says, I am only accepting IDs that are held perfectly horizontal right now, but the light arrives as a spinning corkscrew.
So what happens?
The bouncer only grabs the tiny sliver of the spiral that happens to be horizontal at that exact microsecond and lets it through.
Okay.
Then, a millisecond later, the corkscrew has spun a little more and a new sliver becomes horizontal. The bouncer lets that new piece through.
And the result of this bouncer's strict rules is that the light on the other side of the door has to be totally rebuilt.
Yes.
The text calls the exiting light a phase composite.
That's the crucial mechanism right there. The light that successfully makes it into Newton's room is reconstructed from a piece of the first slice, then a piece of the next slice, and so on.
It's like a Frankenstein wave.
Exactly. And to our human eyes downstream, this newly built phase composite looks like a single, intact, simultaneous plane of white light hitting the prism.
But it's an illusion.
It is entirely an illusion. The field now carries the absolute record of how the bouncer granted permission. It is a complete wave again, but it has lost its simultaneity.
Meaning the pieces did not enter the room at the exact same time.
Right. And visually, to human perception, a loss of simultaneity appears as segmentation.
Segmentation, meaning bands, meaning stripes.
You've got it.
Okay, so if a simple slit in a window blind breaks simultaneity and forces light into these segmented composites, what is the thick, dense glass of a triangular prism doing to that spiraling light?
Well, this is where the true paradigm shift happens. In Newton's textbook model, the prism is just a passive sort of pre-existing colored pixels.
Right, the skittles.
But under this phase constraint model, the prism is an incredibly active, hostile environment. It is a dispersive medium. When that spiraling, time-lagged light enters the glass, the phase fronts physically drag and shear against the atomic structure of the medium.
Okay, break that down for me. Dragging and shearing in what way? Like trying to walk through deep mud.
Actually, exactly like walking into deep mud. Imagine a line of 10 people walking arm in arm across the paved parking lot.
Okay.
And they hit a patch of deep, thick mud at an angle. The person on the far right hits the mud first and immediately slows down, while the person on the far left is still walking at full speed on the pavement.
Because the right side slowed down first, the entire line of people naturally pivots. They swing around.
They pivot. Now apply that to the spiraling phase composite of light. The dense glass alters the lateral transport conditions. Because the wave is already a composite of time-delayed slices, the drag inside the glass affects those slices differently. It forces the oscillatory field to complete its phase cycles relative to space. The drag literally sorts the varying phase positions out horizontally.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm mapping this correctly. You're saying the phases get sorted out inside the glass?
Yes.
Before it even leaves?
Yes. This is a massive revelation from the text. The light is pre-resolved into structured bands before it ever exits the prism. The phases are aligned, as the text describes, like a marching band exiting the prism in step.
So the orange light doesn't magically become orange out on the wall?
No, it doesn't.
The specific phase lag that we eventually see as orange is organized into a neat little row inside the tunnel of glass before it ever steps out onto the field.
Precisely. Refraction.
Mm-hmm.
The bending of the light as it finally exits the glass into the air does not create the sorting. It merely maps those already organized phase modes into different exit angles.
That is incredible.
The wall is just a blank canvas recording what the prism already resolved internally.
Which brings us to an analogy from the text that honestly completely changed how I think about the universe.
The stem cell one.
Yes, because if the prism is actively organizing phases, then before hitting the window slit and the prism, white light is not a mosaic of colored pixels. It's not a bag of Skittles.
Definitely not.
The text describes white light as a high-symmetry, multi-phase, unresolved state. It actually compares white light to the biological potential of a stem cell.
The stem cell analogy beautifully bridges the gap, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a stem cell in a lab petri dish.
Okay.
It doesn't have an identity yet. It isn't a heart cell, it isn't a brain cell or a skin cell. It is sheer biological potential.
Right.
But if you introduce it to a specific chemical constraint, a certain environment, it resolves into a liver cell. In a different environment, it becomes a nerve cell.
Yeah.
White light operates on the exact same principle. It is raw, unresolved oscillatory potential.
Okay, I know if I'm walking my dog right now listening to this, I'm looking at a bright blue sky or a red stop sign, and my brain is just screaming, that color is real, I can see it. How do we tell the listener that the stop sign isn't actually painted with red light? How do we bridge this stem cell idea to the bright colors hitting my eyes right now?
But understanding the color is elicited, not preloaded.
Elicited.
Yes. It is not an intrinsic material property of the light beam. When that raw potential of white light hits a physical boundary, whether it's a prism, a painted stop sign, or even the atmosphere, that boundary enforces a differential phase lag. It acts as a constraint.
Just like the bouncer?
Just like the bouncer. What your eye perceives as the color red or the color blue is simply your brain's biological translation of a specific, segmented stack of phase offset permissions.
That is wild. We aren't breaking light into its component parts like, cracking an egg to separate the yolk from the egg white.
No, we really aren't.
We are taking a unified spiraling field, forcing it through a physical constraint, and the resulting visual rainbow is just our eyes interpreting a time-lagged, reconstructed field.
Right. And to pull all these threads together here,
Yeah.
we're not denying Newton's actual observation.
Right. The spectrum definitely exists.
Exactly. The beautiful rainbow on the wall is real. Nor are we denying that wavelength plays a role in optics. But what this deep dive reveals is that wavelength is not the primary architect of spectral structure.
It's phase.
Yes, the reason a rainbow forms, the reason it pools so perfectly into distinct geometric bands, is governed by phase alignment, boundary constraints, and incredibly precise timing. It is an active mechanical sorting, not just a passive filtering of colored ingredients.
It really changes everything about how we interact with the visual world, which is why I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today, drawn directly from the text.
Oh, I like this part.
The source states that this type of physical boundary condition doesn't break light into smaller parts. Rather, it makes its internal timing legible, piece by piece.
Its internal timing made legible.
Yes. So, the next time you look around your room, at the specific shade of paint on your walls, the glowing colors on your phone screen, the fabric of the shirt you're wearing right now, remember that we've always assumed those colors were fixed, physical traits.
We thought they were just facts of the material world.
Exactly. But if color isn't a preloaded property of the universe, if it is simply the visual consequence of internal timing made legible by physical boundaries interfering with a spiraling wave, how much of what you think you see as a solid, fixed trait of reality is actually just an illusion born of phase, spirals, and time?
It makes you wonder.
Are we just seeing the shadows of a ticking clock?
We used to think the locked door of Newton's optics was clean, settled, and completely pixelated. But when you look through the keyhole with phase in mind, the mechanics of the universe look infinitely more dynamic.
It's a completely different room inside. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanisms of light. It has been a totally mind-bending journey exploring these sources with you. Keep questioning the textbook, keep looking closer at the world around you, and we'll see you next time.